Well, Courtney, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you and learn more about what you do and stuff. You're the CEO of Sober Vibes. Is that true?
It is true. Yes, it is true.
Yeah, and you have your own podcast and
Hmm.
yeah, we're in the same space and it's always so nice to be able to talk to somebody else who shares a lot of the same experiences. So I'm really excited to learn from you what you do to help people. But I like to start off with a little game I call the lightning round, which is very
Oh, yes,
slow.
please.
Yes, it's a little game. When you first got sober, was there a book that helped you early on in your journey?
Yeah, the first book was Drinking a
A
Love
love
Affair.
story?
Yes, or Love Story. Yeah. So, by Carolyn Knapp. That
Yeah.
was my first quote unquote quit lit. And I read that in my first year of sobriety, and it just really, really it hit me. I related a
Yeah.
lot to her story.
It's amazing how often that book comes up.
I hate to say this because it's like, but it's a classic,
It
especially
is.
it is. And she actually, I don't think she's alive anymore.
No, she
I,
passed away.
yeah, passed away, I believe, of lung cancer. But like, it is a classic, and I think is a good stepping stone into if you want to read somebody's story because of the way she talks about it and describes it. Like, it's just so spot on.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, who those of us who are sort of in recovery, it's like who didn't have a love affair with booze?
Yeah, and then you look at it where you're just like, when you look at it, besides that addiction, like the best way, because I mean, people don't understand what addiction is unless you have it. But when you explain to somebody, yeah, it's like a love affair slash toxic relationship, a lot of people can relate to that more and understand
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, we've all had the toxic
Oh
relationship.
my God, yes. Whether it's been a romantic or a family member or a friend, everybody has experienced one toxic relationship in their life.
Yeah, or you know what, a work relationship. Everyone's had
Oh
this
my God.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's what it's like. It's like a relationship. It's a coping skill, but it's something that's, the good thing about alcohol, it can't chase you down like a person can.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good one. Do you have like a go-to mantra, maybe a quote or an idea that you live by?
My mantra that I have used for quite some time is always, and it's one that helps with anxiety too, but it's like, I'm exactly where I need to be right now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that it does it. I think the anxiety comes from this idea that we're supposed to be doing something else, or they're like there's something missing, or
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, so
that's a
that
good
one
one.
that one has helped me a lot, and if you need to use it, please do, and use it on repeat.
Yes, because the thoughts come on repeat. So
Mhm,
that's a
mhm.
good antidote. In terms of a self-care practice, do you have like a morning routine or do you think of it, is it weekly or do you incorporate like annual retreats? What does that look like for you?
I have done my morning routine for a very, very, very long time. I started getting more into them, I think, in about year two or year three of my sobriety. And I definitely, and then when I had my son, it obviously changed. But
Yeah.
where I'm back to now, because when you become a mom, those first year or two, you got to adapt. So I actually
Yeah.
incorporated that at nighttime for some time. So now
Uh,
I'm back to my mornings, and I read personal development. I do my gratitude journal, and then I have do my meditation.
that's awesome. What kind of gratitude practice is it like a list or do you have
Yeah,
is it,
I just write 5 things I'm grateful for the day. I started off the day I became sober, where I actually just woke up each day and was like, "Thank you for another day of
mm,
sobriety, alcohol-free living." And then when I started to get more into gratitude list, it was 3 things I would write, and then I upped it to 5. So it's very simple. I don't write paragraphs. I don't sit there and like make it too complicated. Today I wrote, I'm grateful for my hot coffee. Like I'm
Yeah.
grateful for the consistent sunshine in Michigan. Like I'm grateful
All
for the
right.
warm weather. Like stuff like that. Like a lot of people sometimes overcomplicate it and it does not need to be.
You know what I find interesting is I often encourage, clients and people that are trying to get sober to establish a gratitude practice. And it's
Mhm.
so interesting, like how elusive it can be at first,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Like not knowing what to be grateful for, you
Yeah.
know? And in my mind, there's like 1,000 things that go right every single day that we just kind of take for granted. So it's just about slowing down. It can be little things, it can be big things, sometimes a
Mhm.
combo of both. But I really feel like the gratitude practice is a great way to get centered and it really sets the tone for the day.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
2, it starts shifting your perspective. And the gratitude thing, the sooner you do this in life, but in the sobriety journey, the sooner you do this, the more you will get into the flow of accepting your sober life and actually appreciating it and realize that this is a gift, this is a
Mhm.
second chance at life rather than what you're missing out on.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Mhm.
I think we're trying to battle this or overcome this negativity bias. Our
Mhm.
brain's always seeking, where is the danger, what's not working, so that we
Mhm.
can fix it. But I really feel like the gratitude practice does begin, like you said, to shift
Mhm.
that to what is
Mhm.
working, which is important. You
Yeah,
mentioned, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say because when you quit drinking too, it feels like a punishment for some time. It feels like,
Yeah.
"Why can't I have this? What's wrong with me? Like, how did life get this way?" Right? Like, so it feels a lot like that for many people who enter in the space, and that's why gratitude will help you flip that script.
Yeah, it is a grieving process.
Mhm,
Definitely
mhm.
feels like a loss.
Yes.
Yeah, so gratitude is a great antidote to that. You mentioned that you like to read personal development books. Are you reading anything now that is really working you?
Well, in 2024, because I had a real bad case of burnout at the end of last year after promoting my book and writing it and all that jazz. So I actually went into 2024. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to read some lightheartedness. I'm just going to read other people's story. So I'm actually reading right now a book about the Real Housewives.
Oh,
So I've just been having fun with reading again because
yeah,
last year, I'm like, it felt like a chore, but this
yeah,
has also been like 8 years of reading stuff like that, so I just needed something lighthearted.
yeah. It's good to mix that in. I'm a total self-help junkie, so I'm always looking
Mhm,
for books that are
mhm,
inspiring other people.
mhm.
Um, that's awesome. Do you have a like when you think back about when you first got sober, it sounds like was it 12 years ago, 11 and a half years ago, something like that?
Yeah, 11 and a half years ago.
When you think back to the beginning, is there something that you wish you could tell your brand new sober self?
Oh, yeah, to just chill. In the sense of I mean, I did kind of, I chilled when it came to my social life, but in the sense of and this is what I share with a lot of people, like, rest. Don't beat yourself up for being tired, for, feeling exhausted some days because you are going through such a process I mean, now I know more about it of going through pause and just that your body has taken such a toll. So just keep resting and don't beat yourself up about it.
That's a good one. Yeah, I feel like, especially as women who do too much, maybe
Mhm.
resting is really important, sort of
Mhm.
not intuitive. I
Yeah.
sometimes do you ever fall to this like if I'm not doing something or being productive, then it creates anxiety?
Yeah, 1000%. And I learned that more when I had my son. And now after I put him down for his nap, I sit there and I decompress for like 30 minutes. And even if that's just me staring up at my ceiling, like because I have to readjust my nervous system because I mean he's a wild little one. So, and with toddlers, they keep you on your toes. So yes. so when he was born, I was taking on that. And
Mm.
then in the process, I'm like, no, I need to take care of myself first and continue to rest.
Yeah, that's really good.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about kind of how we got here.
Sure.
Maybe you can sort of describe, your family of origin, how you grew up, and when you started drinking.
Mhm. So, I grew up I grew up and we moved around a lot for my dad's work. So I was shy because having to move around a lot. It was very intimidating, always having to start a new school year and put yourself out there with friends, and then you would move a couple years later. So I actually didn't start drinking until I was 19 years old because,
Wow.
yes. And, in high school, I smoked weed, played around with some mushrooms, but I always would not I wouldn't drink. Like I drank probably like 3 times in high school and that was it. But addiction had run in my family. So I was like, especially with alcoholism, functioning alcoholism. And so I wouldn't touch it. And then at 19, living in the suburbs of Detroit, you could go over to Canada and to Windsor, and you can drink over there at 19 years old. So that's what we did. So at 19, when we went, I absolutely fell in love with it. And it really made me step out of that shyness.
Mm.
And it made me feel alive and like safe. And again, making me feel like I could do things that I wouldn't do normal me, right? Like non drinking me. So that the shyness, I really, really think played a huge part into why I loved alcohol. I mean, as well with trauma too, but when it is true with people, when it sometimes just brings out a personality or brings out something in you because that's how alcohol is. That's what it does. So,
Yeah.
so
Yes,
I
ma'am.
started drinking at 19 and then I quit drinking at 29. I was 6 weeks shy of being 30. From 19 to 25, it was innocent until 25 when it started to grow darker. And at 25, I remember after a night of drinking, I was like, there's going to be a day where I don't drink anymore. Because it was going into blackouts, right? As the years went on, it was more and more stuff was getting dangerous. Waking up in a hospital, waking up in a jail, waking up in men's beds. I had no idea what their names were, but I could tell you what bar I met them at. Like, so it was getting to that. So at 25, I was like, there's going to be a day this does not exist in my life. But 25 to 29, I then tried the quote unquote moderation game.
Mm.
That's a whole exhausting cycle of itself. That is when you're trying to control something that you no longer have control of. It's exhausting. So at 29, when I lost my rescue cat for a second time, I was tired. I felt like an 85-year-old. Like I was just sick of that cycle and I was sick of continuing to break promises to myself of like, okay, don't go out when you go out tonight, don't do shots. And then immediately going out and doing shots. And just I didn't hold my word. And so I finally stopped at 29 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I totally relate to, telling myself I'm not going to do
Mhm,
XYZ and then
mhm.
doing that exact same thing and
Yeah.
then waking up the next morning and be like, what happened?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
absolutely.
terrible feeling.
It's a terrible
Um,
feeling, and then too, like, I had my first panic attack at 25 years old. I was on a weekend bender, and I'm thinking I'm having, like, a heart attack and about to die. Went to an, urgent care, and the doctor was like, "I think you're having a panic attack." I'm like, "Oh, okay. It must have been all the blow and alcohol I drank this weekend." Do you know what I mean? But, like, for me, I thought I
I,
was,
s-
like, dying, but that was, like I was like, "I never experienced that." So from
wow,
25 to 29, my hangovers turned into it was like a production for a couple days of just having that hangover that lasted 2 to 3 days and in crippling anxiety.
brutal.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, no wonder you quit at 29.
Yeah.
You mentioned briefly, you kind of threw out the word trauma, and
Mhm.
I'm curious if you want to share a little bit about what kind of trauma you experienced?
Well, the trauma that I experienced was more of emotional trauma and things that had led into my life with just my upbringing. You know, my parents got divorced at 7, and there was just a completely different life that we had lived after my parents got divorced, and really not having my emotional needs met. So
Mm,
and that really, you know, I had a mom who worked 16-hour days because she was a single parent. You know, now as a parent, I understand this, like I get it. And then she had her own issues. And then, you know, my dad was like a Disneyland dad, and he had his
yeah.
own issues. So it was just a combination of needs not being met. You know, so.
So you spent a lot of time alone.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm the youngest out of 4, but I just think it's hilarious when people are like, "The youngest always gets what they want," and I think that the youngest gets what they want because no one wants to deal with them, and, like, so
Mm,
my siblings were older, and, I mean, not by much, for my oldest sibling to me, we're 5.5 years apart, but, like, nobody wants to hang out with the younger sister.
right,
So, yes, I did feel like, a lot that it was just me, you know, kind of playing with myself in situations, or feeling like I did want to belong with my siblings and hang out with them, but they didn't want to hang out with their younger sister. So,
so is it fair to say that you experienced, benign neglect, some abandonment, some of, wanting to belong, but not having a place?
I never felt like I didn't have a place, but it definitely was abandonment. And I have to say, if you've ever dealt with a parent with if you've ever dealt with a parent with mental health issues and a parent who is a functioning alcoholic,
Hmm.
it there's no place for you. It's not about you.
Right.
It's in that cycle went on for a very, very long time. So,
Yeah.
and, you know, and again, everybody has their own trauma, and it's just one of those things of just like, it was never dealt with, you know, it was never
Right.
addressed. I come from a generation of parents who it was about them. It wasn't about the kids. Kids
Right.
were, you know, I think up until recent of these generations coming up, that it's more about, you know, we're sitting there apologizing to our kids for our actions. That wasn't happening with the baby boomer generation, but they
Hmm.
didn't have it from the greatest generation. So, you know, I definitely look at it differently now, as I said, as being a parent, but it's just very hard coming from 2 people with issues like that.
I think what's so interesting about growing up that way, which I actually grew up the same way. Like
Mhm,
my dad wasn't a drinker or anything like that, but my parents divorced and I was 7,
mhm,
and my older sister and I were left home alone a
mhm,
lot.
mhm,
And my mom was working hard. My dad paid his child support and visited and all that. I still did not get my needs met. And
mhm,
it took me a long time to realize the effects that
mhm,
this benign neglect had on me,
mhm,
right? Like nobody
mhm,
was paying attention to how I was feeling.
mhm.
Nobody was paying attention whether I was scared or needed help. Like nobody noticed.
Yeah.
And so it created, I wonder if you also sort of developed like this fierce independence, like you had to figure things out for yourself, like you don't, it's difficult to ask for help. Have you struggled with those things too?
Yeah, we're like twins.
Podcast hosts,
Yeah.
recovery people.
Right, because it's funny because my sister ended up becoming like a mother
Mother
figure to
figure.
me,
Yeah.
because my sister had to do like take care of me. It gets me emotional with it because
Oh, why?
just because I love my sister so much, and just like,
Mm,
you know, we were both kids, and that's a lot to ask. When the kids become the adults, when they're
yeah,
it's just not fair.
it's not.
So, again,
It's
it
not.
makes me emotional because of now being a parent and, like, in it with my 2.5-year-old. I could never imagine not being there for him emotionally. But yes, it created a fierce independence. I had to have a lemonade stand when I was like 8, 9 years old to be able to go visit my grandmother and have spending money. And let me tell you this was before like lemonades, like now you see them everywhere. Like,
Yeah.
this was back in the early 90s. Like,
Yeah.
and all of my siblings are like this, where we, all four of us, have this like fierce work independence and have been
Yeah.
making our money. And it might not be a good thing that we were, working when we were kids like that, but we always worked to take care of ourselves, because a lot of the time we were told no for things
Right. Right.
and to figure it out for ourselves. And we just did. So, yes, and asking for help, I finally and it was in my recovery where I finally was able to, but it didn't happen until like after 6 years of my recovery, where I finally was able to ask for help and
Hmm.
not ask for help being like, "Well, do you think you could help me do this? And I'll do this for you." Because that's how it
Right.
was always. It was,
Reciprocated.
yes. And it was finally was like, "Yes, I need help. When can you come over?" Like now.
Full stop. I need help. Full stop.
Yes, yes. So it is a thing of that type of emotional neglect that you do, and
Yeah.
same thing of turning into, then I was like the good girl, where I just said, yeah, like wanted just to please people and didn't break the rules because I was the easy kid, right? So
Mm.
there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, it's like that need for external validation becomes
Mhm.
like this drive for performance,
Yes.
seeking that external validation, trying to be significant or respected or seen. That's like the need
Mhm.
of every child to be seen, heard, and understood. And it's
Mhm.
when you don't get it from your primary caregiver, it's like the lengths that we go to get our own needs met is pretty extraordinary.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
when you were talking about the lemonade stand, man, I was babysitting as soon as the neighbor lady would let me at 13. I was the only
Mhm.
girl in my neighborhood that had a paper route.
Mhm.
I've always, my whole life have had at least two jobs. I've never had just one.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh my God, same. Me too.
I don't know. Well, workaholism never hurt anybody, did it? I don't
Well,
know.
but that's what I'm saying. It's like, well, was that a good thing? Because I look at where I am now in life, I'm just like general of my work history. And it was like I always figured something out for myself financially, right? So
Right.
it's like I take a great deal of pride in my worth ethic, not only for when I
Yeah.
was doing it for somebody else, but now that I've been able to build what I built, like
Right.
it's something to take pride in, but yes, it could borderline on like the workaholic.
Yeah, it's those survival skills that helped us to survive,
Yeah,
out of balance, but also bite us in the ass.
right. Yes,
Burnout's a real thing.
it is. It is.
I understand that, we work hard to accomplish big goals,
Mhm.
but sometimes it's hard I feel like a lot of the work for us overachievers, the
Mhm.
work is to not do.
Mhm.
That's the hard part.
Exactly.
Let that shit go.
Right, exactly.
That's
Exactly.
so hard. So tell me, so you mentioned losing your rescue cat was part of your bottom. How did they even know your cat wasn't being taken care of? Who
Well,
ratted? Did someone rat you out? What happened?
Well, so it was my last night working in the service industry. It was my last night bartending. I was transitioning into,
Bartender.
yes, I was transitioning into the 9 to 5 in the medical field, because this is what I
Oh,
thought I wanted to go into. And so my boyfriend at the time, he was like, "Please don't like start ripping shots as soon as you get there." I'm like, "No, no, 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 I won't." And of
don't be
course,
ridiculous.
yeah, of course, I went in there and started taking cherry bombs down. Gross. So, so the night happened, then, and two of my best friends were staying the night at our place. And so I woke up on the couch to one of my best friends being like, "Court, Fiona is missing." That's my cat's name. And Matt is pissed. And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, it's fine." And so, or she had laughed. I went back to sleep, and then I woke up to my boyfriend telling me to get up from the couch, and then him telling me that Fiona was missing and that I threatened to kill him the night before as I was standing over our bed in a blackout. So that is how I found out that Fiona was missing. And I said, after having this talk with Matt, I said to the universe that if I find her, then I will give up alcohol. And in that talk too with Matt, he was like, you can continue to still drink, but I'm not going to be here. Like
Mm.
I'm done with this. It's been a year and a half. We were living together at that time. He's like, this is not what I want to continue doing. And I laid in a very big hangover for 3 days because it almost was like, not only did I drink a ridiculous amount like I had been, at this time too of my drinking career, it became more of like a weekly binge. Because it's so funny when people are always like, well, did you drink every day? I'm like, not towards the end. Towards the end, I was just doing like 1 or 2 on the weekends. But I drank so much, it was to that point. And at that point, laying there for those 3 days, I think that the hangover became more of 10 years of just the shame and guilt in
Yeah.
situations, missed opportunities, how my life panned out of, the situation I was in. So I did find Fiona. 3 days later, I had a total spiritual moment of this cat finding her outside. Everything around me went quiet. I couldn't hear the cars on the road that we lived by. And it was a beautiful moment, and she's still alive to this day, and that boyfriend's
Oh
my
my God.
husband.
Oh my gosh.
Mhm,
Wow.
mhm,
That is quite the story. God bless
mhm,
him for hanging around.
mhm,
So, what was your process for once you have, it's not like you had a spiritual experience
mhm,
and you had that clarity that you wanted to
mhm.
quit. What was the process?
The process for me was just not to drink that day. So the first couple weeks went to AA. I was having very bad anxiety. Listening to somebody say they were 10 plus years sober, I was like, this is too much.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
How am I gonna get to day 3? The talk of God turned me off. I was not at a point where, I had believed in God. I wasn't there. And I think that that's too where people should have um more of an understanding that for anything like that. I mean, when you're coming out of an addiction of where I was at, like I did not have a spiritual practice, and I think that that's okay. So, until somebody finds it on they have to find it on their own to be able to even be comfortable, with talk of God. So that's where I was at.
Mm.
So, I stopped going to after a couple weeks, I was like, "This is not for me," and I really white knuckled it that first year.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then my second year, I got more into working out and nutrition. And then my third year, I got into personal development. And then, really, within those years, I then developed more of my own spiritualness that connected to and what I believe in. And then, actually, that third year, I went back to AA for summer and partaked in that. I also, too, that third year, started doing therapy again. I've
Okay.
hired a coach before. I've done it. I've done a lot. So it's like
That's a lot of things.
yeah, so it's been an evolution for me, and finding stuff I needed at that time with what I was going to be able to take in and really then implement it. So
Right.
because when I work with customers with clients and share this experience, I come from a place of like, I don't want to overwhelm people because if you take too much on in the beginning, it can be a recipe for disaster to then overwhelm yourself and relapse. So that
Right.
first year, I honestly just got used to the idea of waking up each day and living life without alcohol.
Yeah, that's rough. It's hard to do it by yourself.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, is that, would you recommend that
No.
looking back?
No, God, no.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Matt quit drinking. He didn't have a problem, but he came from very dysfunctional alcoholism, and he was just to the point where he would have 2 and be like hungover. He's like, this isn't worth it to me anymore. So it
So you
was
guys quit
nice.
together.
Yeah. So it was nice to have his support. I tell him all the time, I'm like, if you ever want to go back to drinking and you have a beer or whatever, feel free. I don't want it in my home. And he was like, no, I mean, I've made it this far. Right. So,
That's amazing.
yeah. So I had his support. And then about a month or two after I quit drinking, I had a girlfriend who quit drinking. So it was nice to lean on her with that type of support and where we had one another.
That's,
But
I mean, peer support can be so good.
yeah, like, definitely I would recommend for anybody, it's like find yourself something of a community, but I had to, like, that year, those first 90 days, I really just chilled in my home. I went to work because a lot of my stuff had been so social for so many years where I had
Mhm.
to learn to sit my ass down at home and Mod Podge some picture frames and watch, innocent TV.
Innocent TV.
Yeah, and, like,
Yeah.
getting, like, baking and, like and readjust my nervous system and
Yeah.
just, again, like, go through a Friday if I was feeling triggered and being like, "It's fine that I'm home," because, as you know, when you quit drinking so I was 29 going on 30, and I was stuck in an immaturity level of a 19-year-old.
Right.
So it was like, "I'm missing out. I'm missing out. I'm missing out."
Mm.
And then understanding this more, I realized where it was like, "Oh, this actually has stunted my emotional maturity."
Yeah, you hear that a lot in the 12-step rooms that
Mhm,
however old you were when you started drinking is your maturity level. Like it retard it well, it yeah, it stops your maturing
mhm. Which
once you start drinking.
I mean, I believe it. I totally believe it.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your book because I feel like it's so important. Remind me of the title. I know it's
Sure.
Sober Vibes, but
It's Sober Vibes: A Guide to Thriving in Your First 3 Months Without Alcohol.
3 months, like that is such an important guidebook because
Mhm.
that is, I feel like the first three are probably the roughest.
The roughest.
The
Mhm,
roughest. I mean,
mhm,
so now I understand that, the whole, neurochemistry of addiction, you've been flooding, I was, flooding my brain with dopamine artificially.
mhm,
And I didn't know this at the time, but alcohol will raise your baseline of cortisol when you're not drinking. So stress and anxiety is at a higher level when you're not drinking, which
mhm,
sort of kicks off that feeling of, oh, I deserve a treat or something to relax at the end of the day. And it's like that
mhm,
vicious cycle. So that first, I wonder if you had the same experience. I felt like a raw nerve ending because I
mhm,
felt all my emotions
mhm,
and simultaneously bored out of my ever loving mind
mhm,
because I just wasn't getting the dopamine because my brain had just been trying to protect itself. So
mhm,
it doesn't absorb a dopamine as well when you first get sober. So I love that you said that you did like the baking and the
mhm,
crafty stuff
mhm.
because there is something about like little handicrafts that sort of get you in the present moment, kind of get you past those feelings of boredom and extreme feelings.
Yeah, so, I don't know, it was the first couple weeks. Matt came home and he was like, "What are you doing?" I was sitting there on the couch on my phone, and I was like, "I'm Googling hobbies." And he was like, "Excuse me?"
You were Googling what?
I was Googling hobbies because
Oh, hobbies.
I had none. I had none for 10 years
Yeah.
other than I knew how to work, and I knew how to work good, and I knew how to drink. So,
Yeah.
like, working and drinking, that is all I did.
Yeah.
So, I had to really take it back to, like, some basics, right? And in my Google search, I then, like, I was say it's talking about hobbies and do this and do that, and it said baking, and it triggered a memory in me where I was like, "Oh my god, I used to love to bake." When my parents got a divorce, I would go over to my dad's house on the weekends, and my dad didn't have a lot of money, and he would be like to give something for me to do, he would let me pick out, like, cookies or brownies to go and bake, and I enjoyed it, and so I actually brought that back into my world and found so much enjoyment baking
Mm.
again. And then the crafting, like the Mod Podging of just random stuff. I like Mod Podged a luggage set. I Mod Podged picture frames. My husband, Matt, He's extremely artistic. And so he actually was showing me all of this stuff. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll do it. We went to Michael's and got all my supplies. And I sat there at nighttime. And mind you, that was 2012. So streaming was just starting on
Oh,
Netflix.
sure.
And so then I watched Friday Night Lights and watched that whole series and sat in that and just got comfortable not continuing to live in a chaotic state.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's something so magical about crafts and stuff that just,
Yeah, because right, because it keeps you busy. It keeps your mind from not continuing to think like, where am I going or where I should be going right now and like thinking about a drink. So it really does. It keeps you, this is why art therapy, we need lots more of it. Like it keeps you busy. And it's something you're creating, same thing as baking, you're creating something and there's
Mhm.
something then afterwards to be like, oh wow, I started something from start to finish, even if it's already like pre-made dough, who cares, that you said you were going to do something and stuck through it from beginning to end. So for
Yeah.
me, compared to what I was doing for 10 years, that was like night and day difference.
That's so good.
Mhm.
Listen, I remember walking through Hobby Lobby with my mom one time and she's looking around. She goes, I don't know how anybody can be bored. So cute.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. So walk me through the book. Where does it start?
So it starts actually with me sharing my story in it. So an
Yeah.
introduction with me, and then we start getting into like the first 30 days, right?
Okay.
Of really cleaning out your house,
Hmm.
getting rid of alcohol, me explaining to like if you live with somebody with booze, just ask. Ask if they can put it somewhere where it's out of sight, out of mind. So I really walk somebody through the book of what to expect. On top of that, there's journal prompts to work through in that book. So you actually can write in it, which I really appreciate. And then there's coach tips in there. I talk about socializing without alcohol. Um, I talk about, again, cleaning out, how to tell people you're not drinking.
Those are huge.
Yeah, and I say it's okay to give a little white lie because a lot of people get so it makes people sweat to be like, what do I say? And it's like, it's okay. You can either tell somebody your story or you can just give a little white lie. Like, don't make this a bigger deal than it is. Because what I have learned is when you quit drinking in the social environment, 90% of people actually don't care that you don't drink.
They don't care.
They don't care.
And the people that care have a problem with drinking, and you don't want their advice anyway.
Exactly, and then that's when you start to see, like, people who are stuck at the age that they started drinking at, like and it
Yeah.
is true, it's like, it's more of a their problem and not a you problem, and that's something that takes some time to really, really get to see because when you quit drinking, you are this grown-ass human, but you feel like a newborn
Yeah.
inside, like, you've gotta relearn how to live in such a saturated world of alcohol, and you've gotta learn how to live in that world without it.
Yeah, seriously. Socializing is hard, especially like the mom groups. I just recently made the mistake of engaging with somebody who was an influencer talking about putting booze in her Stanley cup as she went
Mm.
to go. And I was like, oh, nice. What is that saying to your kids? And she goes out the front door, and I'm like, oh, drinking and driving. That's awesome. And man, the backlash, people were so triggered by me calling her out for drinking.
But I just did this the other day, of saying, talking to the mother who is in that cycle, and I got people on there was like, "You're trying to say all mothers are like that," and I just hold my ground. I'm like, Did you even read what I wrote in the
No, of
caption?"
course not.
Right? So and then they're like and this one, lady was trying to argue. I was like, "Listen, I'm not talking to all mothers." Like, just stop. And then I was like, "Courtney, disengage." Like, you
Yeah, you
cannot.
just gotta let it go.
Yeah, but then that's where you see it's just like and people are so sensy about alcohol, and it's like, "I'm not talking to you. But that is the thing of what they're exactly doing, because I've come across, influencers too, where I've seen that stuff and I'm just like, again, you might not have a problem, but you are now getting into a car with your child drinking and driving.
Yeah, and they're trying to be like, oh, there was no car in the, I didn't see a car in the picture. And I'm like, what do you think? She got on her broom and flew there? It's like, no, she probably drove there. Maybe her husband drove. And regardless, it's like your kids deserve a sober mother,
Yes.
right? Like, what is it saying to your kids? Like, you can hide the drinking, but you can't hide your behavior once you start.
Yeah, and I want to say this for people who don't think that their kids have any idea. I still, to this day, can smell what it's like because of my childhood. I know the scent because I smelled it for years and years and years, and I
Mm,
watched it. I know what the smell of Listerine scope going onto a human being's breath who's trying to cover booze. Still to
yeah.
this day, that's like
Wow.
burned into my nostrils.
Yeah.
So, you're not kidding anybody. No, but
Nobody.
especially with these kids. So,
Yeah. And the moms that are just kind of co-signing you, they're not your friends.
yeah, well, and I have to say this because I saw an influencer too of she talking about her kids like baseball game, and there was like 4 games in one day. I was like, oh my God, it's like
That's a
that is a
lot.
lot, right? But then in her reel, come 10:30, 11 o'clock, because she time stamped it all, there was a cooler with champagne for mimosas. And I have a very close girlfriend where her and her husband's the coach of these of their daughter's softball team.
Mm.
And she has told me, she's like, Courtney, I do not drink at these. When it's time to go for away games, she was like, these parents get hammered. She was like, and me and my husband have made a pact, like we will not drink, we will not embarrass our daughter and or ourselves. And she's like, Courtney, this is what's happening at these sports games now. She's like, it's
Yeah.
it's become more about the parents than these kids.
Yeah. They think it's like, a time to party or something. I mean, don't get me started. I guess I got you started, but it
Well, yeah,
just,
because now being a parent, like I saw it before, but now being a parent of like going through this, like I look at
yeah.
it completely different. Again, this is not a judgment, it's an observation. And when you come on the other
Oh,
side
I'm
of this,
judging. Just kidding. I'm kidding.
but when you come on the other side of it, you just see it differently. And,
Yeah.
and if you've been impacted with a family member who it was always about their booze and not your needs, it hits differently. So
It does.
you see this happening, and you see these kids events turning into parents getting hammered with their red solo cups. It's not cute. It is not cute.
It's not cute. And the thing is that your kids deserve a sober parent,
Hmm.
right? And you're not hiding it from anybody. And if you think this idea that the influencers are like making light of it,
Hmm.
it really bothers me. I have no when it comes to that, I have no sense of humor. Like I don't
Mm-mm.
find anything about that funny at all.
No.
It's not funny, it's not cute, and
Mm-mm.
the kids are suffering.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So, I love that listen, I love a workbook and I love
Hmm.
journal prompts.
Hmm.
There's something about a good question that gets you introspective and helps you to do that self-reflection,
Hmm.
right? And that is a great way to sort of sort your feelings out. And I think a lot of times in early sobriety, when all your feelings are arising and you're not accustomed to dealing with them, it's hard to even name them.
Yes.
So that sounds like a great process for someone to start sorting out their feelings.
Yes. Well, exactly. And I have a question in there that I repeat a couple times. And there's a reason why I ask you the same question a couple times. And that is because I really want to burn into your mind, body, and soul where drinking has taken you, and
Mm.
because that is a practice I did when I got sober for a very long time. I sat there on Sundays and did like just a little meditative state, eyes closed, thought about one of my drinking days. And I wouldn't always pick the most extreme, but I would pick a hangover or one of the extremes, or, look how far you've come since you've quit and how your life is a 180. And I did that practice for years.
Wow.
And, I worked with a dude and he was like, well, he's like, I don't really want to live in the past. I said, sir, you are not living in the past. This is serving you as a reminder of where you want to keep going. But you got to do this to continue your journey forward because it's so easy to forget how long, it's so easy to forget the time from the
Mhm.
last time you drank, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I'm going on 12 years, but I still know what it was like to drink alcohol because I programmed myself so well with that.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about what life is like now.
I mean, life is wonderful now, I mean, life for I don't think for anybody is like rainbows and butterflies, but like how life is now is the life I'm living was always what I wanted in my active addiction.
Yeah.
So, and the most beautiful thing that has come out of my sobriety and my journey is my son, and that I am a sober, present mother for him. Because one of the reasons of quitting that Matt and I talked about is like we never wanted our child to experience a drunk parent.
Mm,
So the fact that we broke that cycle
yeah.
is huge because then my little dictator won't, grow up that his mom or dad always chose alcohol first before him.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Man, we do tend to give our kids what we didn't get, you know?
oh, 100%. And like, I mean, that is what I'm shooting for that, especially too. Like, I'm very affectionate with him and I tell him all the
Yeah.
time I love him. And, we have dance parties and I just like, I let him be a kid. And
Yeah.
I, as well, I saw a quote recently was like, the childhood he is experiencing is the motherhood that you're experiencing. And that one
Yeah.
reigned so deep with me where I was like, oh my God, it kind of had to snap me out of it when I was realizing about my burnout. I was like, oh my God. And then that's when I started taking actions to start healing from that. But it
Hmm.
is so very true. It's like you just want to give your kids what you didn't have.
Yeah, that is so true.
Mhm.
Man, well, listen, thank you so much for everything that you shared. Congratulations on the book. That
Thank
is
you.
a huge accomplishment,
Mhm.
and so needed too. Those first, 90, 100 days are really rough. And so it's nice that, people can actually grab the book and know what to expect
Yeah.
and have some strategies, the socializing, the how do you fill your time, how do you manage your emotions? Those are all things that are super important to address. It's always all the same thing. So,
Yeah, and too in the book, it's really for the reader to come up with their own sobriety plan. And I give a lot of options because at the end of the day, how what happened for me is not going to work out for everybody. Same thing for you. How you recovered, how you got sober might not be for everybody else. So it's really on the person to decide how your sobriety and recovery are going to look, but
mhm.
here's these tools that can help you along the way.
Yeah, that's so true. Everybody is so different, and we're
Mhm,
so lucky. I was just telling somebody recently, it's like this is a great time to get sober because
mhm,
we have so many books, but there are podcasts, there are
mhm,
coaches, there are different programs. Like we have never had more information available for free
mhm,
or very low cost. I mean, the cost of a book, for heaven's sakes, is less than a couple of drinks nowadays.
mhm.
So, I mean, this is a great time to be sober.
Absolutely, and it's a good time too for of the coaches and the podcasters and people out there for you to dip into like who you vibe with, honestly. Like, and like,
Yeah,
okay,
seriously.
like okay, she talks to me. She's like, this is exactly what's going on with me. And I think that that's what's so great. It's quicker to find it, as you were saying, where
Yeah,
it's very easy to find what's going to work for you.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I feel like I learned a lot, and I'm going to leave links to everything in the show notes. But for those who are maybe just listening, where can they find you?
So I party the most on Instagram at Sober Vibes. So just find me there, and then my podcast Sober Vibes, and my website CourtneyRecovered.com.
Yay. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much. It was so good to be with you today.
Thank you.